why do you suppose that there are some that are so challenged by fitting science and Torah together? I mean, we're talking about decent religious people that are, it's almost like unbearable to think that we have finally seen how science backs up Torah concepts. But some, it causes them to bristle. Like, I don't know.
Okay, so that's a good question. Good way to start. This should take us the whole lecture, I guess. Okay, so I think a good way to begin broaching this subject is, I think the central question is as follows. The central question is, what has to fit into what? You know, I believe that every single letter of the 304,085 letters of the Torah was conveyed by God to Moses to write down. It's all divine. Moreover, I believe that the oral Torah is also divine. And every teaching in the oral Torah comes from God via Moses and via the regulations and the ordinances about how to derive it. It's all divine. I also believe that the entire world and every atom and every bit of matter and all the rules of physics were all ordained by God. And the reason why this question has relevance for me, it's because the world, and dare I say science, is God's handiwork. Torah is God's wisdom. Both of them are absolutely from God and absolutely true. And thus, if I find a contradiction, that cannot exist, because how could God contradict himself? And that's why the whole subject, the whole topic, has resonance in my eyes. Now, the reason why people, I think, bristle at the subject, because they view them as distinct, disparate entities. You know, if science was hijacked by the scientists, people who study this, and Torah is for the religious people, then why do we need to bend to them? Why do we need to yield to them? We could say, listen, the world is 5,000 years old, take it or leave it. If you don't believe it, you're a heathen, get out of here, right? I think that's one approach. But my problem with that approach is that presupposes that science is something which is not divinely ordained, it's not overseen by God. And I believe it is. It's just God's handiwork. And by the way, I would argue that history is God's narrative, it's God's story, it's God's plan for the destiny of humanity in the world. It's also overseen by God. And thus, the contradictions are only apparent. They're only surface contradictions. And that's my motivating perspective in trying to parse out this subject. I want to add, there's another, I would say, corollary to this. We know that there are at least 4 general realms of understanding of every piece of Torah. The idea of pardes, pshat, remez, drash, sod, the idea of a simple understanding, a more advanced, and I guess more esoteric and more arcane and more mystical and more easily misunderstood as you get deeper and deeper into the Kabbalistic ideas of the Torah. For example, this past week, it was Parshas Va'eschanan, the second Parsha in the book of Deuteronomy. We know the Torah is divided up into sections called Parshas or Sidras, and we're in the last book of Deuteronomy, book of Dvarim, and the second section, which is called Va'eschanan, and it's Moses giving a dialogue. It's Moses giving a monologue to the people. He's about to pass, and he's conveying his last will and testament to the nation. And the previous parsha, Devarim, the first parsha, talks about the nation and their mistakes and their history and their wars and their struggles, and it highlights a lot of the episodes that were prominent in the previous 40 years. And then the beginning of last week's parsha, Va'eschanan, talks about Moses himself and the dialogue that he had with God when he's trying to beseech, to implore God to rescind the vow, the decree that Moses is not going to enter the land. Moses, of course, leader of the people, he took him out of Egypt, ostensibly to bring him into the land of Canaan, the land of Israel. And God says, I'm sorry, you're not going to enter. And he's trying to change that. He's trying to maybe be expiated from that sin and from the concomitant decree that he's not going to enter. So that's how the parsha begins. Vaschana means I implore, I beseech God, let me enter the land, let me see the temple, let me see Jerusalem, let me dwell in the land, change your ruling. God says, no, I'm not going to change ruling, don't speak about it anymore. I have a book in my house, incidentally, authored by my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. I don't know if those are the right amount of greats, but you get the point. He was the rabbi of Krakow. Krakow was one of the big cities in Poland, and he was its chief rabbi in the beginning of the 17th century. He passed away in 1633. His name is Rabbi Nassan Nat Shapira, or Shapiro, I would say probably anglicized as Shapiro. My mother's maiden name is Shapiro. My maternal grandfather is a direct son after son, a descendant of this rabbi, and he wrote a book on this parsha. One book on one parsha, and it's a thick book, but it's not even on the whole parsha. It's only about the first sliver of the parsha. Moses makes a request from God, and God says no. So what's the book? It's about this dialogue. It's like one paragraph in the Torah. And it's called Reish Nun Beis Ofanim Al Parshas Vaschana. He wrote another book called Megala Amukros, which means literally the revealer of the depths. And he was one of the great Kabbalists of all-time history, right after the Arizal's period. One of the great Kabbalists. And he wrote it on the Torah. On every parsha, there's his teachings on the parsha, on the Megala Amukros. On this parsha, one book on this dialogue. And it's called Reish Nun Beis Ofanim on Vaschana. What does that mean? Reish Nun Beis is the gematria, is the numerical value of 252. 252. 252 Kabbalistic interpretations of this dialogue. What is Moses asking for? What is God saying no to? 252 different explanations on this. Why 252? Why not 253? Apparently, he was anticipating writing 1,000 ways to understand this dialogue, but from heaven they stopped him. He passed away, by the way, at the age of 49. Very young by modern standards. Passed away at the age of 49. So he wrote 242 interpretations on one dialogue. Each one of them has a different understanding of the context of the discussion, a different understanding of why Moses wanted to do it, all wrapped with all of Torah. He knew all of Talmud, all of Torah, all of Scripture, all of the halachic the halachic literature, all of it by heart. He was an incredible genius, not just a great, a diligent scholar. But each one of them comes from that perspective, and he'll say, okay, what does this mean? When did this happen? Because Moses says, I implored God at that time, saying. Doesn't identify when that time was. Each one of these 252 explanations of this dialogue tells you exactly when it was, why it was, and weaves it into the actual words. And it explains, for example, I started reading it yesterday. I got up to the fifth one. He says, for example, in I think it was the fourth or the fifth one, he says that why did Moses want to go into the land of Israel? So he brings a Talmud. The Talmud, it brings like 5 pieces. It's each one of them is about a page or two, but it's written very densely. And he's referencing Talmud, and it's very hard to read. But he quotes one Talmud that says that the times of Ezra in the Second Commonwealth, they vanquished the desire for idolatry. You read Deuteronomy, you're like, they're worried. Moses is warning us so much not to do idolatry. Who wants to do idolatry? No one's even interested in it. The answer, the Talmud tells us, is that the men of the Great Assembly, they prayed to have the desire for idolatry vanquished. Okay. And then he quotes another Talmud that says that Joshua was punished because Joshua didn't do it. Because Joshua didn't do it. He should have prayed to get rid of it. He was, 900 years earlier. He should have prayed to do it. Why did he wait 900 years? Let Ezra do it. Okay. And then he brings a third Talmud that says, from the a third citation actually, that says that from the times of Joshua, no one sat in a sukkah. What does that mean? So what it means is that a sukkah, it means a spread, God spreading his peace, because from the times of Joshua should have gotten rid of the idolatry, therefore God's peace wasn't spread out over the people since his time, until they got rid of the idolatry. And then it brings a fourth question, well, why didn't Moses get rid of it? Why didn't Moses get rid of the idolatry, of the desire for idolatry? Does it make sense that he should have gotten rid of? Why is Joshua criticized? And a letter is deducted from Joshua's name. Why is he criticized? And then he wraps it all together. He says, well, Moses wanted to go in the land of Israel because Moses knew that the only way to get rid of the desire for idolatry was in Israel. And therefore Moses never got into Israel, was never criticized for not getting rid of the desire for idolatry. Joshua, who did, he was criticized. Oh, and then he adds, what does Moses ask for? Ebra na. Let me cross over, please. What's the numerical value of the word Ebra? The same as the numerical value of the word Ezra. Moses is hinting, I want to do what Ezra did. And what does na mean? Na means please. But na is the numerical value of 51. And there's 51 separate prohibitions in the general rubric of idolatry. That's what Moses wanted to do. Again, this is one out of 252 ways to understand the dialogue between Moses and God. What's Moses wanting? What's God saying no? And wrapping it all into the words and showing parallel words all over Jewish literature and Jewish scripture to weave in all 252 explanations into the 5 sentences of this dialogue. Again, what this shows us is that the Torah is infinite. And by the way, I want to add, the Vilna Gaon, who actually came subsequently, he had 2,000 interpretations of a different verse in scripture. Again, it's unfathomable to us, but even that, it's only 2,000. Maybe it should have been 200,000. But my point is that as you advance the deeper levels of learning in Kabbalah, there's more and more and more Torah that's being unlocked. What do you do when you open the Talmud, the revealed version, so to speak, and you see A, and you open up the Kabbalah, the hidden version, and you see B, and A and B don't seem to coexist? What do you do then? Do you favor A? Do you favor B? Do you favor the pshat, the simple understanding? Do you favor the different, deeper layers of understanding? You know what the answer is? I'll tell you the answer. The Vilna Gaon says, if A, that you discover from the simple reading of the Torah, is different than B, what you discover from the deeper levels of the Torah, you've gotten one of them wrong. There are different dimensions, there are different layers in the strata, but they're all the same, they're all Torah. And therefore, if A disagrees with B, one of them is wrong, which is a very revolutionary idea, because there was a lot of literature based upon what does the halacha follow? When the Talmud says the halacha should be A, and the Kabbalah says the halacha should be B, we have a dilemma. We're in a pickle. Which one do we follow? Says the Gaon of Vilna, no. If you really understand it, you'll realize that what they seem ostensibly to be in opposition, they are really the same. And I think that's a similar example to the dilemma of grappling with the apparent conflict between God's handiwork and God's Torah and God's wisdom. And the people who bristle with it are the people who, in my opinion, are either not interested. It's okay. I'm okay for people saying, you know what, I have bigger fish to fry. I have bigger issues to delve into. I have bigger problems than trying to do this. And I also think that there is a point that I agree with, and that is that we don't need to bend backwards to accommodate other perspectives. Some heathen comes, they've been wrong 1,000 times. We haven't been wrong yet once. They've been wrong 1,000 times. Always had to change their perspective. Always had to amend and adapt based upon the quote-unquote scientific method. And yet they're sure that now they're right. And us, who haven't changed a thing, haven't changed a single letter of the Torah in thousands of years, have yet to been proven wrong. Why should we have to be subservient to them? Why should we have to twist ourselves into a pretzel to accommodate them? Why should we have to shoehorn Torah into the rigidity of science? Let's do the opposite. That I do buy. The idea that we have to accommodate the Torah, not vice versa. We have to change ourselves. This gets even personal. Like, I want X. I want my cheeseburger. Torah says no. But I want my cheeseburger. Let's find a way to change the Torah, to reinterpret it, to make it fit into my pre-existing desire. And that's a common, a common desire that we may have to say, listen, I don't want to be flexible. Is there any room, Rabbi? Is there any flexibility in this? Is there any wiggle room? Because my behavior is fixed. Let the Torah accommodate my behavior, and not vice versa. That is what we call megale panim b'Torah shelo k'halacha. The Rambam tells us of the people that lose their portion Olam Haba is someone who tries to bend Torah to accommodate them, not vice versa. It means they're not coming to Torah and say, okay, what does the Almighty want of us? They're not coming with an empty slate and an open mind and saying, okay, what's here? And trying to evaluate it on its merits. They're saying, I want X. Let's figure out a way to arrive at our destination, and let's try to bend Torah to the destination that is preferred. That is corrupt. And we have to make sure that when we engage with trying to resolve the apparent contradictions between Torah or the history that Torah provides to us and science, or what science purports to know, we shouldn't have that same misinterpretation by saying, oh, science is for sure right, and they're inflexible, and therefore we have to find a way to find malleability in Torah to work into the rigidity of science. That is where I bristle at, that notion I bristle as well. However, I don't view them as contradictory at all. What exactly is the reconciliation? Maybe there's more than one reconciliation. Maybe it doesn't really matter. Because there's a lot of questions we don't know. The Torah gives us a grand total of 31 verses and how God created the world. Doesn't seem to be a very exhaustive account, or at least not in a way that we could understand. There is a book called Sefer Yetzirah. It is apparently authored by Abraham. One opinion says authored by Rabbi Akiva. Regardless, it is found in the Talmud. It's not a new thing. And what does Yetzirah mean? Yetzirah means creation. It's one of the two words to describe creation. It's not called Sefer Beriah, it's called Sefer Yetzirah. As an aside, we might have mentioned this in the past, there are two verbs to describe creation in Genesis. One is Beriah, and one is Yetzirah. We've said in the past that Beriah is ex nihilo, something out of nothing. Yetzirah is formatting something out of something else. If I gave you a human, but just the matter that makes up the human, it's something apparently you could buy from a drugstore for like $3. Good luck taking that and forming that into a human. Right? That's for God. But apparently it's for us too, because there's a book called Sefer Yetzirah that teaches you how to do that, how to take some earth and add some other minerals or whatever and make a human. The Talmud says that the two sages would study Torah every Friday afternoon. What would they study? They study Sefer Yetzirah. And what would they do with that? They'd actually do it and make a fattened calf, and that's what they would eat every Shabbos. What's for dinner tonight, honey? I'm going to the House of Scholarship. I'm going to the Academy, and I'll come back with food. Are you going to stop off at Belden's? You going to stop off at the grocery store? No. I'm just going to stop off at the Academy. We're going to study Sefer Yetzirah. We're going to produce a calf, and that's what we're going to eat for Shabbos. That's what the Talmud says that the sages would do. Apparently, I guess it's also the domain of us if we know. By the way, you can read Sefer Yetzirah and you won't know anything of what's going on. It doesn't make any sense to you. And if it does, you're deluded, because go produce me a calf.
Is that how they created the golem?
Yeah, the golem or the golem would be also done via that method. The Talmud.
He's right there.
As to whether or not the Maharal of Prague actually created a golem is a subject of much debate. It's likely he didn't. However, the Talmud does say, when it talks about that, it talks about one of the other rabbis who also created a man. It says it as matter-of-factly as I'm saying. I think it was Rava Bara Gavra. I think that's what it says. Look up Sanhedrin, either 65 or 67b. I always get mixed up because it talks about it in both places. He created a man. As matter-of-factly as that. He used the Sefer Yetzirah and created a man. And then he sent him on a message, go to my friend. He goes to his friend, and this other rabbi sees this man showing up, and he starts conversing with him, and the man does not respond. So he says, aha, I know exactly where you are. You're not a real person. You were created by my friend. go back to where you came from, go back to your dust. You're not a real person. What this telling us is that there are limitations. Maybe a human could create another human, or a humanoid, or some sort of golem or golem, but to endow the power of speech to said human, that would not be possible. This is all a long way of trying to answer the question of why is it relevant for us to study. It's relevant for us to study, I think, because we don't believe they're in conflict. They are both emanated from God, God's Torah, God's world, God's handiwork, and therefore it's not possible for them to be in conflict. How are they resolved? It's important for us to know that they are resolved, because it is both of them are the product of God. And I do think it's interesting to reckon with this question. And like I said, the Torah doesn't give us an exhaustive account, and there are all kinds of mysteries. And I do think that it is legitimate for someone to say, listen, I read the Torah, it says that God created the world in 6 days. I counted how many years from Adam to Moses to this to that. I did the calculation, and now we're in the year 5,779. And the scientists, what do they know? They say it's around for billions of years. No, they're mistaken. God created a world that looked billions of years old, whatever. But again, that's a legitimate answer, but that does not obviate the possibility that there's other answers. And I thought the last time that we spoke about the answer based upon the Kabbalistic idea of the oval cycle, the fact that predates any sort of modern apologetics. It's before Darwin, it's before the Big Bang, stuff like that. I think that gives it a certain credibility, a certain legitimacy to say that it wasn't done as a way to try to resolve, maybe in a less rigorous fashion, this question. Rather, it was just trying to say, based upon very advanced sources, what could be the actual history of the world, and I think that gives it some added legitimacy. But yes, that's my perspective on the issue. My perspective is, this is from God, this is from God. By definition, there cannot be in conflict. They apparently are in conflict, just based upon prima facie what we see, and I think it is important for us to reckon with it, and it's important for us to resolve it. And yes, if there's more than one answer, that's great. And we are acknowledging that we don't know necessarily which one of those are correct, but we're also saying that they're not in conflict. And we have a smorgasbord of options of trying to resolve them, and that should, I think, quiet any problems that we have. And it's a good thing to do. If you have a challenge to your faith, why can't you resolve it? Isn't that the right thing to do? To me, it doesn't bother me. These questions don't bother me at all. On a personal level, it doesn't bother me. I think that everyone's relying on miracles. That's another theme. Maybe we'll talk about that next time. Everyone's relying on miracles. Isn't the idea, even if you don't believe in God, you do believe in miracles, because if it's not God, it's some other thing. God's maybe a dirty word. It is, I think, in certain circles, and therefore you say Big Bang, and that's kind of a kosher version of some sort of cause, some sort of reason, some sort of beginning. We call it God, they call it Big Bang. We call it God, they call it natural selection, right? Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's different names for miraculous meaning, things that are not, or circumstances that are not part of what we see in our world as it currently operates. That's that's my perspective on that particular question.
And thanks for answering the question, because in my head I didn't answer.
Which one was that?
The second one was actually about the dialogue with Moshe and Hashem.
Oh, yeah, 252 ways.
Yeah, because we'd had a little brief scratch the surface discussion and brought out a couple ideas, but there's just so many things to that. I would love to be able to read it. Is that the English? That book?
That book is almost as inaccessible as possible in Hebrew. I was thinking about this on Shabbos. Like, if I would translate this, each one of the 252 answers would need to be probably a book, because there's so much built in, there's so much knowledge you need to have, and it's Kabbalah. It's legitimate Kabbalah, not the watered down, put a red string around your hand Kabbalah, right? It's not at all like that. It's the most legitimate of those. So yes, it's if someone cannot read Hebrew to the degree that they can't read that book, all the more so they should not read that book. Okay, what else do we got?
Okay, you had the word Yetzirah, you said was creation or form.
Yetzirah, yeah.
That sounds a lot to me like Yetzer. Are those two words
Ooh, love it. Okay, the next question. The Hebrew word for creation and the Hebrew word for inclination is apparently the same. Yetzer hara, evil inclination. Yetzer tov, good inclination. Yatzar, to create. What is the connection between the words Yetzer, Yetzer hara, evil inclination, and creation? That is a fantastic question. So first of all, your notion is correct. Hebrew is unlike any other language. If I want to create a word in any language, I have to get the linguists, the philologists, the etymologists, the Merriam-Websters of the world to agree, and that becomes a new word. It becomes part of the slang. Eventually, it pivots into the official lexicon. Hebrew doesn't work like that. Hebrew, though it's called in Jewish literature, it's called Lashon HaKodesh, means the holy language, holy tongue. That's the language that God used to create the world, which means that it's an essential language. It's not let's just agree on what the word means, and once we agree upon it, then now we use it. Rather, the word itself and the meaning of the word, those are the same, which is why there's an entire realm of study which is trying to understand the philology and the etymology of words and what they teach us about the words that they're using to represent. So, for example, the ABCs of Hebrew, what does an A mean? A means nothing. What does a B mean? I guess there is a B that means to be something or to buzz around like a bee, but the letters don't exactly mean anything. Whereas in Hebrew, the Aleph and the Bet and the Gimel, those are all words, and those are words that relate to how those letters are written and what they represent, and the power of what they represent. And that's the letters themselves, and the way you enunciate those names of the letters, they themselves have meaning. So this is a very broad question, but it's a correct question. It's a very broad subject, but it's a correct question to say, isn't that noteworthy? Isn't that interesting that the word to create and the word to entice are the same? The Yetzer hara and the Yatzar. So I think when you ask such a question, it's a portal. It's a way, it's a window into understanding maybe what the Yetzer hara is. I want to add, just as an aside, there are other examples of this, like, for example, the word to acknowledge and to admit, as in to admit wrongdoing or admit fault, and the word to show gratitude and to be thankful is also the same word. To be modeh, hoda'ah, is also admittance, like admittance of guilt, and it's also to acknowledge good. And both of them are about acknowledging something. To acknowledge good done by others and to acknowledge evil done by you. Both of them are the same thing. The same characteristic needed to admit when someone was wrong is the same characteristic needed to admit when someone else was right. And the flip side, by the way, of that is also the same. To reject or to have ingratitude and to reject God, the word for ingratitude and the word for heathenism, for heresy, is the same word, kfirah, which is another amazing idea that when someone does not acknowledge God or someone does not acknowledge goodness done by others, that's the same word as heresy. And the connection there is maybe more obvious. Whereas the word to create and the word to for the evil inclination, those don't seem immediately to be overlapping. But they are. Here's why. There are, to my knowledge, about 8 different descriptions given to the Yetzer Hara in the Talmud. And if you read any one of these 8, it sounds very bizarre. But the truth is, they are each a puzzle piece to create the complete picture of what the Yetzer Hara is and how it operates, and of course giving us the knowledge of how to combat it. The Yetzer Hara is considered a king. Well, who else is a king? Of course, God's a king. It's almost as if you have 2 kings almost fighting for the throne in our hearts. Who are we going to show allegiance to? Is it the Yetzer Hara? Is it to God? In fact, one of the motifs of Rosh Hashanah is the idea of crowning God as king and evicting the imposter, the foreign king, the faux God. And in fact, the Talmud, the book of Shabbos, page 105 says, 105b that is, says, Lo yihiyeh b'cha el zar, you should not have within you a foreign God. Says the Talmud, you should not have within you a foreign God. How do you have a foreign God within you? A foreign God is something external, that you take the figurine, you bow down to it. You go to the idolatrous temple, it's outside of you, you bow down to it. What does it mean that there's a foreign God within you? That is the Yetzer Hara, says the Talmud. The Yetzer Hara is considered a foreign God. It's a king. The Talmud of Brachos, page 17a, says that it's the leaven in the bread. The Medrash tells us that it's very good. Wait, is it evil condition? Is it bad or is it good? We get conflicting reports on that. The Talmud book of Kedusha, page 30b, tells us that it's a force of renewal. Every day it renews. The Talmud, in that same place, tells us, and by the way, that appears also in the book of Sukkah, page 52a. I happen to know these because I study this quite rigorously. It tells us that it's also a force of overpowerment. It overpowers you. The Talmud in the aforementioned Sukkah, page 52a, tells us that there's 7 different names for the Yetzer Hara. And each one of the great giants of our history gave it a different name. God called it Ra, bad. Moses called it Etz, and etc. All the great sages, all the great leaders called it different names. Does the Yetzer Hara get bigger or does it get smaller as someone becomes a more righteous person? Again, we're given conflicting answers in the very same page of Talmud. In Talmud, Sukkah, page 52a, it tells us that when someone starts off life, they have a very flimsy Yetzer Hara. It's like a spider's web. And then as they do more sins, it gets thicker and thicker and thicker until it becomes as thick as a rope that's used to fasten an ox to a yoke. Very thick rope. On that same page of Talmud, it tells us that Kol Hagadol Mechaveiro, whoever is greater than his friend, has a greater Yetzer Hara. It gets bigger as you become greater. Again, the very same page of Talmud, we're given opposite descriptions. So this is a long way of saying that the Talmud's explication of the concept of the Yetzer Hara is maybe a bit complex and in need of an organization, which, if I may plug a future project of mine that I've talked about in the past. But I am in the final stages of writing a book, and I deal with this question very, very rigorously at the very beginning of the book. So stay tuned.
Can I ask one question, follow up on that?
Yes.
The issue is Yetzer being tied to creation.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Something that comes from something that already exists. But in many ways, the Kabbalah describes that we create angels by our decisions, by our Yetzer.
That's the flip side of it.
Right. Is that sort of what we're talking about?
Okay, well, let me address the answer, then we'll get to the next level. So to answer your question, you didn't ask that question that I asked. You asked a different question. Somebody give you your answer to your question that you asked, not the question that I asked. The answer to your question is that the method through which the Yetzer Hara works is by Yetzer, by taking one thing and making it appear like something else. Again, it doesn't say the Borera, the bad creator, with the word Boreh, which means to create something out of nothing. It's Yotzer, which means to form. It's the evil inclination by taking something and forming it, presenting it as something else. Which means that the bread and butter of the Yetzer Hara is by framing and selling something, by making it look very different than what it really is. Taking something that is something and creating something new out of that something that really is an illusion. It really is. It really is. It's using subterfuge because it's creating something which is really nothing. But it's a creator because it takes something and creates the illusion of something else. But it's a creation of something out of something else. Maybe just we could dip in our toe into the subject, the idea of the leaven and the bread, right? What's the difference between the matzah and the bread? On a substance level, they're both flour and water. But the only difference is that one looks like a flat pancake. It's like those Apple commercials where you just see a pencil because it's obscuring, it's so thin, the device that's behind it. It's the same kind of thing. It's like if there's a pencil on the table and there's a matzah behind it, you wouldn't even see the matzah. It's so thin. But on a substance level, it's the same thing as the bread, which is nice and big and puffy. What's the difference? The difference is that the Yetzer Hara comes and creates, so to speak, the allure of the bread that takes the substance of the matzah and expands it, makes it so much more exciting, so much more desirable, so much more worthy of our attention, and tries to get us to focus on that and to ignore and to neglect the other things.
But apply that same idea to the Yetzer Tov. Does it work the same way? How does
If understanding the Yetzer Hara is difficult based upon the tremendous amount of attention accorded to it in the Talmud, understanding the Yetzer Tov is even more difficult for the opposite reason. Because there's almost no attention given to it in the Talmud. So you're saying something correct. You're saying that the Yetzer Tov also creates something, but what does it create? Isn't that an interesting question?
Is it like that balance that's always...
I would say probably the answer is that, and this is based upon a teaching in the Midrash, and this is we're very advanced territories. What did Adam want? Maybe you could distill all of human angst into that question. What did Adam want? What was he thinking? Adam, what were you thinking? That's the question, right? So the Midrash tells us that he wanted to be someone who was Yotzer Olamot, someone who was created worlds. He couldn't create worlds. He wanted to create worlds. He couldn't create worlds. And he thought would be the way that he could create worlds. Which is a long way of saying that Adam did not have Yetzer Hara, but he didn't have the flip side of the Yetzer Tov. He couldn't be destructive, but he couldn't be creative. His band of opportunities, both good and bad, was very narrow. And he wanted to expand that. He wanted to gain the opportunity to be Yotzer Olamot, to create worlds, or create angels. And he had to swallow the bitter pill of being someone who was also now destructive. And he got the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara in tandem. The opportunity, the ability to create worlds, and the opportunity to be self-destructive, Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara, those are what he got together at the same time. So maybe that's what it means. Maybe what he really wanted was to be someone who had the Yetzer Tov, to be able to create something out of their mitzvos, out of their Torah, out of their struggle with the Yetzer Hara, that opens up all kinds of opportunities to be a creator. But he couldn't do that prior. But yes, to answer your question, the reason why it's called Yetzer Hara is because it uses a certain creative, or maybe formative is a more accurate word, formative power to form something into something that previously didn't exist. So much so that the Medrash tells us, which is another piece of the puzzle, by the way, The Medrash tells us that if we didn't have Yetzer Hara, what would the world look like? If we did not have Yetzer Hara, what would the world look like? If we did not have Yetzer Hara, people would not build houses. People will not get married. People will not engage in commerce. People will not have children. The idea of creating any sort of earth-based legacy, have a nice house, have a wife, have a child, have business, all that will be ignored. And we look at that as good things. That's positive creativity. If we didn't have this negative creativity, we wouldn't have the positive creativity either. It would be a much more static world.
Is that what it means when we say we make the evil inclination subject to Hashem?
That's well,
those things?
we were dealing now with more diagnostics, understanding what the Yetzer Hara even is. But yes, one of the ways of remediating the Yetzer Hara, or of neutralizing the Yetzer Hara, or of taking the sting out of the Yetzer Hara, which is another, again, central subject of Jewish life, one of the ways of doing that is trying to figure out a way to subject the Yetzer Hara, to channel the Yetzer Hara, to repel the Yetzer Hara, to constrict the Yetzer Hara, to find other ways to neutralize, to eliminate even, to channel the Yetzer Hara into ways that it's not destructive. Yes?
Crystallize into free will, is that?
Free will is, yes, I would say Adam had a much narrower band of free will, and via his choice, via his sin, if you could call it, because it wasn't a sin the way we think of sin, it was more of a calculated gambit. Doesn't actually flow. The original calculated gambit doesn't have that same, doesn't roll off the tongue as well. We should do that. The original calculated gambit. But his calculated gambit was an attempt that was successful to augment our free will, which means to augment our humanity, to become more human, because a human, by definition, is the free will, is this fusion of opposites. He got two opposites, which is the body and the soul. Now we got at least one more item in the mix, and that's the Yetzer Hara. And that makes it a much more fraught operation, but also a much more opportunistic, or a much more, potentially much more tantalizing reality. As to the question of, does the Yetzer Tov, the good inclination, and the soul, are they different or are they the same? That is a subject that we will not dip into, because it is a complicated question and it doesn't seem to be a definitive answer. But there is a question as to whether the soul and the Yetzer Tov is one and the same, or are they different? A question for a different time, which is my way of saying, I don't know. Okay, who wants to throw something else out there?
We're reading in this portion or last week, where Moses is saying, I want to go into the land, please let me go into the land. And he was denied. But he was preparing the people to go in, even though he knew he was not going to. For these last 5 weeks of his life, he's telling them all this. And it made me think of David. He wanted desperately to build the temple. And Hashem said, no, you can't. You're not going to because of that. But then he made all the preparations and got materials and all that, even though he knew he wasn't going to see it. And am I making a parallel there that really...
Doesn't Rashi make that same parallel? Am I crazy? I'm pretty sure if it wasn't Rashi, it was one of the other commentators. Can I see that book? Oh, okay. This is riveting. I know this is riveting for y'all to watch me thumb through a book. So I apologize for that. Okay, let's see. If I did not see that here, I saw it elsewhere. Okay. Where am I looking? So I saw a connection between Moses and David. I wasn't sure if it was here or if it was elsewhere. It was here, but it wasn't in Rashi. Now I'm remembering it.
Rashi commentary.
No, this one has Rashi also, in Hebrew. Just as easy for me to read as English. Easier probably than like with Rashi. So, I believe that's him. So this is Parsha. It talks about Moses. This passage Parsha. Moses designating the 3 cities that are the cities of refuge on the east bank of the Jordan. So Jewish people are going to be on both sides of the Jordan. You're going to have the 2.5 tribes on the east bank, tribe of Reuven, tribe of Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh, and 9.5 tribes on the other side of the Jordan. And there's 6 cities in total that are cities of refuge, meaning cities that if someone kills, God forbid, accidentally, if there's an accidental murder, then it is, that person is subject to punishment, and the punishment is that they have to go into a city of refuge, which means they have to relocate, they have to move. They have to leave their hometown and they have to move to a different town that's going to be the city of refuge in which they have to live until the death of the high priest. Now, it's also a punishment. It's also a salvation, because if they leave the city of refuge, then they could be picked off by the Gol Adam, which is the redeemer of the blood, which means the relative of the person they kill. Someone is not a willful murderer, but someone who was a little bit negligent, and their actions caused the death of someone else, and therefore they have to be punished, but they're not actually executed, but they could potentially die in the event that they leave their city of refuge. So the city of refuge is essentially, it's like it's a hybrid. It is a hybrid. Okay, what I'm looking at, I'm trying to do 2 things at once here, so forgive me. It is a hybrid of a punishment and a salvation. It's a punishment because they have to leave their hometown and move someplace else, but it's a salvation because that's where they get safety. Now, until the other 3 are designated, until the other 3 on the other side of the Jordan are designated, the first 3 don't come into effect. Which means that you have 6 of them in total. Moses set aside 3, but the other 3 were not set aside yet. Yet, in verse 41 of chapter 40, we see that... There we go, I found it. In chapter 4, verse 41, we see that Moses separates and designates those 3 cities in anticipation for Joshua designating the other 3 cities on the other side of the Jordan. And the obvious question is, Talmud asks the question, it says, we know that there has to be 6 cities for any city to work. So if you designate 3 cities, it doesn't work, because you have to have the other 3 cities. So why is Moses setting aside those 3 cities? Wait till Joshua sets aside all 6, because then all 6 of them in tandem simultaneously become functional, become operational. And the answer, says the Talmud, is that if you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, even though you can't complete the mitzvah, you should still start with the mitzvah. Do whatever you can, and whatever you can't do, you can't do. Whatever you can do, you should do. And this is, of course, manifested by Moses. And then over here, I pulled it up on my iPad, we have the Kli Yakar, who makes a parallel to David. Come on, I'll read you Hebrew. K'mo she'b'sid David. Like we find by David, She'amar lo Shlomo b'no. V'hine ba'ani, he knows the Lebeis Hashem zav, because I am not able to it, I'm not able to build the temple, even though that he could not complete the mitzvah, he wasn't allowed to, still he began with the mitzvah as well, to do as much as he can, to prepare as much as he can, to designate the land, etc., to do everything he could, and set up the situation that his son could complete what he began. And he gives an interesting example. That's why it wasn't Rashi, but it was in one of the other commentaries. The Kli Yakar is one of the early, I would say, Renaissance era commentators on the Torah, what we call the Achronim period, or the early Achronim. He gives an example of an old man planting an esrog tree. What's an esrog tree? Esrog tree is a citron tree. Why would an old man want to plant a citron tree? Because they're a botanist, right? Because every year on the festival of Sukkot, we have to have a citron, we have to have an esrog. But it takes a long time for the esrog tree to yield fruit. So what would he do? He's an old man, he's going to die. Well, the answer is he's got children. He's got grandchildren. And yes, he will benefit, but he'll start as much as he can, and eventually someone else will benefit from it. That's the example that he gives.
He kind of stumbled on it. Didn't know he
Well, there you go. So how lovely is that? So yes, that connection is not was made by you, but it was also made by those great sages of yesteryear. Made that connection. But again, when there's a good characteristic, good behavior, or good insight, the fact that you find many people doing the same thing in different contexts, that should be no surprise.